throughout the presentation, I'll be trying to make a case for why this legislation is important and why you should be interested in its progression and why you should support its progression through the various stages of development. We know that we've got a particular framework for legislative development here in South Africa. I have sadly realized that a lot of times those that are young, a bit younger than me, often choose to not really participate in issues of law, maybe because of the language that is used or because of the drawn-out processes. However, it's very important that with this particular piece of legislation, all of us really play a role. So it is an honor for us to present this bill. We can move to the next slide, please. So the main aim is for you colleagues who are at this Indaba to note what is contained in this South African Youth Development Bill, the draft that we have currently, and to make your voices heard. Obviously, this is more of a preliminary consultation. There will still be proper consultations where we'll even be going to provinces with the draft to engage young people, youth serving organizations, youth-run organizations, and everybody who's interested in youth development generally. So, but ultimately, just as a way of background, this particular law or draft bill came about as a result of the Presidential Youth Working Group, which was established back in 2015-2016 to oversee the different strands or the different implementation of the different pillars of the youth policy. So that Presidential Youth Working Group had essentially two levels of structure, where you had one element at a higher level chaired by the President, where the ministers participate, and then you also had some technical groups looking at the implementation of the 5 pillars. Now, I think what came out from there, even though it was before my time, was that there is very slow implementation of the National Youth Policy imperatives, and the introduction of a law to ensure the implementation of the policy imperatives and pillars was then posited and submitted by the Presidential Youth Working Group. So the aim is then to have a law that is overarching, an overall piece of legislation that speaks to youth development in its entirety. So when you talk about issues of youth education, youth economic participation, youth skills development, and every other thing that you can speak of, even around the machinery that delivers youth services, this law is talking about everything and more. So the minister then established a multi-stakeholder technical team to oversee the development and to advise her on the development of the proposal for the policy document. You'll see on the next slide who is in that particular technical team. Next. So you'll see that it's a mixture of government departments at various levels, but also your business bodies, as well as your academics, as we had yesterday. So those that are not on this list, if you are not a DPSA, for example, or COGTA, or any other department, you would be invited as and when the need arose. So this team developed the draft that we're going to be seeing today, and then it was further enhanced through the consultations that we had in the previous years. Next slide, please. So this slide just gives a summary of where we are currently with the bill. I'm sorry for the error there in terms of the financial year, but the bill is currently in the annual performance plan of the department and has been since 2021-2022, right? Which shows that we are willing as a department to account to Parliament, to account to the public around progress, to say why not push it to 40, why not push it to 50, to work towards this piece of legislation. Next, please. So, very importantly as well, this bill is also in line with the medium-term strategic framework, which is the 5-year implementation plan for the National Development Plan. I know all of us know about the NDP. We might not have read all of it, I've been hearing this being said many times. How many have read the NDP, Kaofela Yon? By show of hand. Oh, you've read it. 3 people in the room. Okay, maybe 5. Okay, so the NDP we know is like our blueprint. Where do we want to see South Africa in the next 10 years or so? I think it's from 2012, by 2030, from 2012 to 2030. So it was an 18-year period ultimately that was given for us to achieve the vision of the NDP. So the MTSF speaks about the goal of building a capable developmental state, right? So this bill speaks to that. It also speaks to the issue of aligning our sector to the overall goal of professionalizing the public service. We know that the National School of Government has been on a drive, supported by Cabinet, to professionalize the public service. So this is also in line with that. But I think it goes over and above the issue of the public service because across the array of society. I think I might have spoken to some youth development practice as a profession. I will zoom more into this in the next slide. And then the management of the professional youth development practice. There are some provisions there. Coordination of youth development. Composition and functions of the Presidential Youth Working Group. The National Youth Machinery, Provincial Youth Machinery, and Local Youth Machinery. So machineries are just sort of forums where we meet and talk about our action plans and our tracking progress, tracking what are best practices, what is happening in KZN that I can benefit from, what is happening in this other district that I can benefit from. So those are the essentially what the machineries are about. Then the issue of regulations. This bill speaks about the minister having the power to develop any necessary regulations. Many laws, right, will come in with that particular clause that says that this law might not cover each and everything that is overall necessary. But through the regulations, you can then come in and expand further on any part of the legislation. So if you look at any other legislation, you'll find that regulations are there. You'll hear that the Minister of Energy has released regulations on procurement from this or that for coal or for clean energy, etc., etc. We can move. I think we can also jump this slide. So, yeah, so on this slide now, we just decided maybe let's have one clause, try and zoom into one clause so that colleagues can then zoom into what is it that is contained in the particular bill. We are saying that despite any law, targets for youth development in all laws and policies on economic development and empowerment shall be 30%. So any other law, despite any other law, the participation of young people in the economy should be at 30%. And then organs of state must develop within the ambit of their responsibilities, plans and strategies to align their laws and policies with the first subsection. What are we meaning by that? When the law is assented, let's say in 2022, 2023 or 2024, organs of state will then have some time to then review and revisit their own legislation to align. So it's easier for people to prepare to comply so that we are not necessarily moving from an arbitrary foundation where it's just about first year already we are fighting. So we are trying to build a country that young people can live and flourish in. So we are also speaking about the issue of availing resources to develop and implement plans and measures to promote economic empowerment and participation of young people, to promote access to economic and educational opportunities, to increase access to financing, procurement, land rights, skills development, especially entrepreneurial skills and capacity for young people, but also the issue of access to markets for young people, but also speaking about compiling of reports that are disaggregated in terms of age, race, disability, and location, but also complying with prescribed measures aimed at achieving economic empowerment for youth. So I'm not going to read everything here on this slide, colleagues. When you do get hold of the documents, I think there will be a lot of time for us to engage with the document. I'm just trying to give a gist of what is contained. Now, I will zoom a bit on this slide. So we are talking about a voluntary association, which is why we are here today, in terms of the management of a professional youth development practice. A voluntary association where members must be qualified youth development practitioners, but also practitioners with experience in the sector, or they can be academics that are in the youth development field. So it's not about closing people that are not necessarily qualified in the space, but those that have got experience are also included. And then currently, and I think I should say this, colleagues, when we went to the Office of the Chief State Law Advisor with these particular clauses, one of the things that they spoke about was that there is a need, in line with common practice, for us as a department and this legislation to speak in brief about the role of the department in establishing the association, right? So that the law or this piece of legislation does not necessarily go deep into the almost day-to-day operational functionings of the association. So what does it mean? It means that the association, as we know, has got a constitution that will ensure that it manages its own affairs on a day-to-day basis without necessarily it being like it's a statutory organization or a legally created organization. So it will be established in terms of its own constitution, with the department zooming into its role in supporting the establishment. Then the issues of, currently the bill speaks about the issues of provincial chapters, but I think as the bill comes through for provincial consultations, you will find that probably that's something that will no longer be there in the legislation once we get the next legal opinion. We can move. Now this is the second last slide developed by my colleague Calvin to just sort of be an input to our debate. Remember yesterday the Chief Director, Dr. Tlhagala, was saying the issue of whether the association will be a self-regulatory or there'll also be the issue of a statutory body in a council will be the decision of this particular collective. So with this slide, we're speaking about the three different modalities for professionalization to consider. First is a self-regulatory body on your left, which is of course non-statutory, right? It is not a legislatively created body. It's not created by the law. Members volunteer to join the organization, so everybody can just volunteer. And then those that are joining or choosing to join will then be governed by the code of ethics. Only them. So if you are not a member of the organization or the association, you will not be governed by those particular ethics or code of ethics that is contained in the document. It is funded by the members of the association itself, and then the constitution, as I said earlier, directs the running of the association. The second option is a non-regulatory body. It should be a regulatory body, which is a statutory body in the form of a council, and then it has got statutes that compel everyone in the practice. So if you are a doctor or a nurse, whether you are a part of any association, the code of ethics of those professionals still binds you, right? Everybody, wherever you are. Then it is funded by government and members of the council, which is like a core, and then legislation directs the running of the council itself. And then there's the hybrid type of model, if we can call it that, the co-regulation, where association by members and a council coexist. So you've got an association and a council at the same time existing. Members join both the council on one side and the association on the other. And then the code of ethics, like the previous one, applies to all members within the practice. And then it is funded by both the government and members of the council, and then it has got both the constitution and legislation. So I saw in the program that we are going to be having a couple of breakaways to speak about some of the key issues around the association and the establishment of this particular organization. So I think as we go there, we'll have time to really unpack the implications of all of these things as they align to this particular legislation. But as we conclude, colleagues, my voice is even starting to break, which shows that I've been talking for a long time. It is recommended that you take note of the contents of this particular legislation, and then, where possible, provide your own inputs. We are going to be capturing this, but know that we are still going to do intensive consultations with the youth sector at the right and proper time. I think with this, Chairperson, colleagues, I'll invite any questions through you, but thank you very much for your time.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Ganaga. He's Director responsible for youth policy development within the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities. And as we have seen in the content of this legislation, issues like the coordination of youth development and also the professionalization of youth work comes out very strong in this piece of legislation. So colleagues, I'm going to open up for questions as the roaming mic gets ready. It was also alluded to the NDP, and just coming back to our earlier exercise, the picture that was drawn. For those who remember dates or don't remember dates, I want to just help you. There's a date when the NDP was launched by the then President, Minister in the Presidency, Trevor Manuel. So if you want to easily remember, what was the exact date when the NDP was launched by Trevor Manuel? Just remember 11/11/11. 11/11/11. 11 November 2011. So it's just for those who maybe struggle to remember dates. But thank you, Mr. Ganaga, for this presentation. I know that you and your team have done a lot of work in consulting on it, and I know it will really carry a lot of weight the day it comes into action, so that young people can definitely benefit from this legislation. So is there, before the next presenter will come, I just want us to focus on this one, finish it off. So is there any maybe comments or questions? You are free to raise your hand. The roaming mic is there. I've noted the two hands. You can maybe just start there. And the colleague there has also been noted. You can go ahead.
Thank you, Chairperson. My name is Mohale Ramoshawa. I am from the Office of the Executive Mayor in Ekurhuleni, in a division called the Youth Directorate. I'm the manager responsible for social transformation. I would like to firstly commend the presentation by Mr. Ganaga, but also to ask as to, when going to commissions, are we going to have the bill? When going to discussion, are we going to discuss based on what is in the bill or just the notes that were there? Because some of the things that were raised by, or some of the things that are raised in the bill are things that we have been raising continuously. Like, for example, I saw a point whereby it talks about youth development coordination, where it talks to national, local, and provincial. For a number of years, or for a while now, we've been talking about these youth directorates or the unit, to say, how should they be positioned? How should they be positioned? For example, now in Ekurhuleni, you have got a youth directorate that is fully fledged. But then we have a challenge in that it is placed in the mayor's office. Time and again, when there are changes politically, then there are challenges. When it comes to budgets, there are challenges, because the youth directorate on its own. We, as youth development practitioners, have been saying that we believe, as the youth directorate, we must have budgets. But in its current form, it's impossible because it's not a department, it's just a division in the mayor's office. For a very long time, we've been saying that maybe if it's in the city manager's office or if it becomes a department under in economic development or any other department, but then it becomes a division or a department that can be allocated budgets. And we are saying this because time and again you hear that there is a youth budget in departments, but then does not get to the youth director or the youth units. You end up having duplication. So if we can be able to talk to those things, so that it becomes uniform, so that it's known that if it's a city, like for example, in the metros, you'll have a structure that is uniform. What you'll have in Ekurhuleni, you'll have in Joburg. What you'll have in Joburg, you'll have in Swan. You go, it becomes the same. If we can address this thing of the positioning, then we'll have addressed the first thing. Because even if you can talk about set-asides and many other things, if the positioning on its own is not proper, we will not achieve anything. Thanks.
Thank you. There on the far side, a hand was also noted. We'll come to you now.
Good morning, facilitator of the session today. I just want to make a comment on the bill. I think it's from 1994 to 2022. I think there's direction when we're going to have such a bill materializing. But where I'm very much concerned is the approach of these bills, how they are constructed. These top to bottom approaches. We don't want you to call us as a department that we must go and mobilize young people to comment in public participation without involving us, who understands the realities of it. There's one that has been made there for the economic empowerment slide there regarding the issue of the 30%. I just want to ask that, is it a relevant 30% cut across for all opportunities, or are you just putting them in the economic empowerment? So that we have clarity, because we are seeing now this purchase policy preference is being challenged, and now you are coming with 30%. Can you elaborate further in detail so that we avoid coming out of this meeting and not understanding where it goes? The last question is how did you identify these national youth forums so that we can understand how do they form part of the consultations of this bill? I think I'll pause there for now. Thanks.
Thank you. You can, there right at the end, is a hand that was noted.
Good morning, colleagues. Today I'll be going as Nati Vilagazi. I am from the National Department of Human Settlements. I'm responsible for youth development support within the sector. So my question, I've drafted it as follows. How important is the bill in relation to other national bills? Does it carry the same weight as other bills in the country? The root of this question comes from the point that As I've been dealing with youth development programs in the sector, I've realized that there are certain pieces of legislation that seem to be more superior than others in terms of how this country operates. There is one act which everybody is so afraid to break in this country called PFMA. You'll be taken to court very quickly if you can bend that rule. And you find that political parties and other civic organizations and even individuals can take government to court if government can break that rule. But you find that there are other pieces of legislations like this bill which are going to be promulgated and be out there, but you find that they will be broken. You know, departments and private sector will not adhere to this bill. Now the question is, who is going to be the custodian? Will it be the minister of the department or the DG who will be able to go and hold departments and other stakeholders to account in terms of not adhering to this bill? So my question is in twofold. How important will this bill be? And will there be a warm body who's going to take people to task if they are not implementing the contents of this bill? I thank you.
Thanks. There's also a hand.
Thank you so much. Morning, colleagues, and thank you again to Ntate Khanaka. It's Ritumetse Rapulane from DBE. On the list, on the presentation, there was a slide that indicated a list of task team members. And my question is simply that I did not see basic education in that list, and I wanted to know why.
Noted. Right, we've got the... Okay, I see there's the last two hands I will note. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair Beksisa Ngobo, Department of Communications. I do not have a question, Chair, but I just wanted to appreciate this work that Ntate Khanaka has done. I think it responds to some of the issues that I raised yesterday, that we really need to institutionalize youth development, and I believe this piece of legislation will catalyze that from happening. But I hope also the Minister noted my plea that, these processes have been taking too long. And I really hope that this process will not take unnecessarily too long. Because as the sector, we really need it. As youth focal points, we also need it very much. Because, some of us, especially us at communications, we've gone through multiple restructurings. And every time there's a restructuring, we always have to fight for our unit. But if there is such an act that provides that instruction or that guidance in terms of what needs to happen to such units, I think it will really help a great deal. But I also want to support what Vilakazi has raised. I think the enforcement of this legislation will also be very key. I don't know, maybe also if the council can also play a role as well in terms of bringing that civil society voice in terms of insisting that the legislation is properly implemented. So I'm just taking my hat off for very good work done. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Here in the middle also is the last hand. I think maybe we'll have to request the SANDF to enforce this act for us and to ensure compliance.
Thanks, Chair. Morning, colleagues. My name is Kevin Selomo from the Department Agricultural and Reform and Rural Development. Mine is about the target, the 30% target, because as a department, we've got a beneficiary selection and land allocation policy, which is approved by cabinet, and then it state targeted 50% for women, 40 for youth, and 10 for people with disabilities. As a unit, we developed the norms and standards for designated groups. We set the targets as per the beneficiary selection and land allocation policy, because the national youth policy doesn't give us targets. And then we currently developing the youth empowerment strategy in agriculture and rural development. And then we also set the target as 40%. So given the 30% target, are we as a department, will we not be contravening the act after it has been approved? That is my question.
Okay, thank you. I think the more the better. Thank you, colleagues. I'll hand over again to the presenter to respond.
Yes, thank you so much, colleagues. Thank you very, very much for your considered views. Let's start with Ndate Ramoshaba. Yeah. For those who don't know. The reason why it's raining in Gauteng and all these other areas is these people. They've got the rain queen there. So the question was, are we going to be having the bill as part of the commissions? And I think the simple answer would be not directly, no. I think the commissions are going to be discussing specific topics. What will happen is that we will be there in the commissions as resources in case that we want to zoom into other elements of the bill. Because I think the bill in itself requires its own zoom and focus. It can overshadow everything else. I know that people are very, very passionate about these issues of positioning of youth focal points and the issue of lack of budgets because it ultimately affects the types of services we deliver. So I think the bill is a tool that will help us in that space. But because we are here on a specific mission, we must not only then just focus on this issue. We've had a forum, Dr. B, the last time we were at the Lakes Hotel there in Benoni, when the provinces were reporting. This is coming up very, very often, and I think it has been there for some time. This issue of lack of budget and where people are seen as dispensable. People are seen, the youth units are seen as spaces for, I don't know whether to call it dumping non-performers or unrequired elements within organizations. So, I mean, those are things that people are saying. But I know that there's been a lot of, even this entire concept of professionalizing the sector is an intervention to be fighting some of those perceived or real threats to the sector. So I think I've answered that question. My brother, you didn't give us your name. I know you said repetition, what, Mara. It helps. It helps. So my brother with a nice beard there. So I think you are saying better late than never. That's the first thing you're saying. It's important for the bill to be there now. It's going to help going forward. But I think the concerns that you've raised is the bill only focusing on economic participation? And I would say not necessarily. One of the comments that came from the consultations at cabinet level, at cluster level, was that the bill should be all-encompassing. It should not only look at the economy, because the life of a young person, the economy is important, but it doesn't only end at the economic level. It's not only about a young person working. It's all about how meaningfully they contribute to society. So that's why the bill is talking about issues of youth representation in different leadership positions. The bill is also talking about how do we create an overall enabling environment for young people to reach their potential in levels that probably we haven't even imagined, sometimes you cannot legislate everything, but you can set a framework for further development. Like if you see the things that are happening in countries like Rwanda and stuff, with how they are playing in the space of the fourth industrial revolution, young people, tech entrepreneurs, people in the gig economy, that is not necessarily legislated, but there is a baseline and a foundation that is laid for people to then sort of excel beyond your own wildest imaginations. So I think that is the intention of the bill. You know, people are talking about new industries that have not even yet been established in the country. So those are things that we cannot legislate now in the bill. But we are saying even when they are legislated, young people must play a meaningful role, generally. So one thing that we continue to do is lobbying for some of these things, right? Even as we are sitting here, on the 6th of December, I think we're having a session with the Eastern Cape municipalities where we'll be talking about participation of young people in the supply chain processes of those municipalities. And we've been invited by that province because they've been feeling that there's a sort of a pushback. Maybe you'll also touch to what Nati spoke about, pushback that says, if you are talking about set-asides for young people, you are already bordering on being against the PFMA. And if you read the recent developments in terms of the Constitutional Court's decision on preferential procurement policy framework, you realize that what the court said was unconstitutional was not the framework itself, but it was the power for Treasury to do those guidelines on behalf of departments. So essentially the Concord was saying, you as an organization, as a municipality, have to have your own preferential policy, procurement policy, that speaks to your own local realities, et cetera, et cetera. So for me, that's very enabling. If you already look at what is contained in Section 217 of the Constitution, that speaks to this issue of empowering disadvantaged groups or previously disadvantaged individuals, you see that our legislative framework is enabling already for participation of vulnerable groups, including women, youth, and persons with disabilities. So we do have that. We need to continue with advocacy. We need to continue even with advocacy in this issue of youth focal points and how they are currently funded or not funded. So some of the things we can even do as we continue with the development of this legislation. Now, you asked a question around how were the National Youth Forum members identified. I would say the forum is a standing structure that has been sitting long before I was at the DWIPD, and it consists of government departments at the national level, at provinces, offices of the Premier are participating. We've also had local municipalities participating in the forum. I think the mailing list is what, 500 people strong, and it continues to grow on a regular basis. So I think it was just that platform that is open, that is existing for colleagues to meet on a quarterly basis and engage. So you've got civil society there, you've got government departments, and you also have private sector organizations. We've had the BBC, Black Business Council, we've had Business Unity South Africa, and other business bodies, including individual business people coming into the forum to participate. So what I can commit to is that this bill will be consulted, we will be inclusive, we will have physical sessions in the provinces, we will also have online engagement, we will do open invitations for written comments so that as many young people are able to comment as can be possible. Parliament, we've seen also, like with the NYDA amendment bill, they've also tended to then also do their own public consultations once the bill reaches Parliament. So consultations, I think we should not worry, we will be engaging with colleagues going forward. Branati, probably I've touched on the question that you've raised. My humble opinion is that there isn't a bill that is superior than the other. Well, generally speaking. The Constitution, of course, is the most superior legislation. So if you don't align to the Constitution, you are gone. But any other bill is just a matter of ensuring that there is strong enforceability And I think it's a point that Mapoloba also raised towards the end there. So with this bill, the comment that I'm getting from you colleagues is that we need to ensure that there is strong enforceability mechanisms, both within the bill, but also institutionally, within the department, within the sector. There has to be that element of saying, okay, so what if the private sector does not comply with this? What mechanisms are there? So it's something that we're, of course, looking at as we continue to strengthen the bill. Yes, Ritumeti, I think one of the things that I said, my brother, was that not everybody was there in the task team, but we did invite colleagues on a need basis. So there was one meeting in particular where we got a colleague from DBE coming. I will give you the details as to who came, but there was one where we had a colleague from the DBE coming to speak about some of the elements. So yeah, no, we didn't necessarily exclude everybody. It was just to say what is the cost structure, and then how do we bring in additional capacity which we need. Then the comments from Mr. Ngobo are noted. By the way, the SANDF will also have to comply with this. So I think the last comment were from Brother Will. I think we have to commend the Department of Agriculture in terms of what it's doing. But the idea around the 30%, it is not a maximum of. The idea is to have a minimum of. So what that means is that if you do 90%, in some sectors, you will have young people in a majority. In the telecommunications space, probably, you'll find that there's a lot of youth startups that are already coming up that exist. There's a lot of skills that are coming up from the universities that speaks to digital skills. So in some sectors, you can even have 90%. There will be nothing wrong with that. In some sectors, you can even have 100%. There's nothing wrong with that. However, you cannot go below 30%. I think that is the idea of the bill. So the question is as to whether that minimum is minimum enough or the minimum should be 50 or 40. It's something that the sector is encouraged to continue debating, looking at the nuances and the different requirements of the economy and the skills that we do have. But I think at this level, the proposal was something that came from the policy itself. The policy currently says 30% minimum. So we are also aligning with that particular existing framework. So I think those are the questions that were raised, and I hope if there's anything, we can continue to engage. This is our bill. Like I said, we are calling upon you colleagues to really be alert as we continue, as we engage you, to also expand the message around this bill so that we can get as many people as possible interested. We can refine it to meet our own needs and also the needs of future young people. I will pause there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, there is one presentation that we will receive now from Dr. Tlagala, and then after that, obviously, then we will have the commissions and see what we'll discuss and resolved on. Thank you. She's waiting for a hand clap.
Thanks, OJ. I think that is ushering me in for professorship, because Professor Richaba likes a round of applause. I think you have to give colleagues, thank you so much. Whilst they're still connecting, I'm also going to attempt to just add to some of the questions which were asked and what Mr. Khanaha has actually mentioned. There was someone who mentioned the issue of bottom-up approach in Divil. I think is my colleague there. You know, when you are in the policy-making space, it can be very tricky sometimes. Because, you know, if you are in government, you need to come up with a base document first, and then from there go out for consultation. Your principals don't want to see documents in the public space before they understand what you are actually doing. So that is why we will initiate the process and then from there we consult later. So that is the process that we know. But then it is important that young people and youth workers, if there is something that is impacting on you, you need to make sure that you make as much input as possible, particularly during the consultation and public hearing process. So this bill is still going to come after it has been approved by Cabinet for discussion as a discussion document. It is still going to come, so there will be an opportunity for you to make input, and please use that opportunity as much as you can. And it will still come, make as much input, as possible, because if you don't, decisions will be taken that are actually affecting your life or the life of our people, but then you have not influenced the decisions. So I thought I should just add on that. And then finally, I just want to say that, another colleague have also mentioned that, with youth development units, you always have to be fighting. All of us are fighting everywhere. We are not, for a long time, that I was alone with few people in the unit. We were 2, 3 in the unit. It was only after many years that finally we got Bontate Khanaga and OJ to join us. You will fight, and then you find that sometimes they don't even hear you, but don't stop fighting. Just fight until someone hears you, because someone will actually hear you eventually. And our hope is that some of the things we need to clarify ourselves as a sector. I think the challenge with the youth sector is that I don't know whether people, they get excited sometimes, and then sometimes they stop being interested, But we need to just be persistent. Because that is what eventually actually brings the results. If we don't actually persist in what we are doing, we will not see the change that we want to see. So we need, in the department, there's going to be a process of developing mainstreaming guidelines for women, youth, and persons with disabilities. My view is that when we develop those guidelines, they will help clarify or expand on what is contained within the bill, like things like the issue of the nature of services that youth development workers have to do. I think to some extent, Becca mentioned that, so that you can start what we have been called here to do. Thanks, colleagues. I'm presenting, I'm sure you can see that this is not my presentation, it's the presentation that has been made to Cabinet on the national framework towards implementation of professionalization of the public sector. It was presented to the ministerial cluster first, and then from there it went through the structures of government until it was presented to Cabinet for adoption. I already alluded yesterday, and even Minister in her address mentioned that this framework has been adopted. So for us to actually find a way in order to push our own agenda, you need to always try and marry what you are doing with the national agenda, so that they can see that whatever you are doing is your contribution as a sector towards attainment of the broader national agenda. So I was actually very happy when I saw that Cabinet approved that, because that is going to be our starting point as the youth sector, as and when we make a presentation to Cabinet, to say that we are pushing for professionalization of youth development practice or professionalization of youth work in order to align to the approved Cabinet national framework towards implementation of professionalization of the public sector. And it was also encouraging that the remarks that were made when this document was adopted, it was that there is a need for different sectors to make sure that they professionalize their sectors or their different professions. So that actually gives us hope, because as I said, efficient, ethical, and development-oriented state can deliver on the commitment to improve the lives of our people, of the people of this country. This means that the public service must be staffed by men and women who are professional, who are skilled, who are selfless, and who are honest. So this does not actually exclude even us in the public service. It means that we need highly skilled people within the youth sector. And this is imperative, particularly taking into account the fact that young people constitute more than a third of the population. So if we don't actually invest in young people, it implies that it will automatically reverse the developmental gains which this country has already earned so hardly. So it's very important that we need to make sure that people who are within the sector, they are also selfless, they are honest, but importantly, they are professional in a sense that they carry their work with utmost integrity. So that is very critical. We know that young people are exploited. For an example, many organizations, they will run training to training. They will just use young people without them really benefiting or improving their own quality of life. So it's very important that whatever is being done, we need to make sure that it translates to improvement of the lives of our youth. And then this is the last pillar of effective and efficient youth machinery. Reforms are essential. Reforms are critical in order to enable public office bearers and functionaries to perform their duties competently, efficiently, and professionally. So you can see that it is not adequate not to do your work effectively and efficiently, but you need to make sure that you also do it professionally. So at the 54th conference of the mandating party in December 2017, there were 4 areas which were targeted as critical areas. First, the issue of political administrative interface and the clear separation of roles and responsibilities between political executives and the administration. In the youth sector, I've had colleagues commenting that there is always political interference. You will find that the youth focal points, they don't feel secured because they are saying if this principal actually departs, it may even affect, my job. So this does not only affect you, I think it affects most of us. That is why you find that most of the times there will be changes. So this actually is people more who are outside of the public trained. Some just volunteer to become youth workers. So there is a need to actually improve. Some of us are not necessarily trained in the space, so some on-the-job training will be very important. And then the shortage of skilled and managerial skills in the public service, it also applies. Many of us are saying we don't have capacity. Someone was saying, I'm alone, and it's not a single case. Many of the focal points, they've been presenting their reports saying that they don't have other people they are working with within their units. And then the issue of unnecessary turbulence in senior positions, we know that there is high turnover within the youth sector. And, issue of career path, I have said that sometimes you've got people who are trained within youth development sector, but in terms of career path, they are not moving. It's very few who are actually employed within what they have been trained to do. Most you find that they can't even find jobs. I can spot my 2 students here who have got youth development qualifications. Fortunately, they are working. There are many others that are not working, but they have got youth development qualification. Lack of, we said that lack of professionalism has detrimental consequences. In the youth sector, I have said that young people are abused or they are exploited. Because, people who are running youth organizations, you will find that they are just doing that for their own money, and they are not necessarily benefiting the very same young people that they are servicing. The professionalization framework anchors and takes forward the work of the NDP and sets basis for the next national development plan. So for us, it also takes forward what is contained within the National Youth Policy, which is very critical, and very soon it will be taking forward what is contained within the South African Youth Development Act. The objectives of the framework to entrench a dynamic system of professionalization in the public sector, to strengthen and enable legal and policy instruments to professionalize categories of occupations in the public sector. You can see the second one. It recognizes that the public service is not homogeneous entity. It has got various occupational groups. And I want to say that youth development is also one of the occupational categories within the public service. Therefore, this framework is also relevant to us. It also enhances and builds partnerships and relationships with higher education institutions and professional studies and professional bodies. We've already started working with the institutions that are offering youth development practice, education, and training. You saw University of Venda, UNISA, there are other universities, like for an example, Stellenbosch University. And we can negotiate and lobby that they must not only offer long-term qualification, they must even offer short courses. They must offer on-the-job training workshops for youth workers. And then to ensure merit, in public service recruitment, selection, and career management in line with the NDP and MTSF. I think when this presentation is mine, I will remove that word. And to also initiate consequence management for material irregularities through transgressions mechanism available to professional bodies and various pieces of legislation. This slide talks about contextualizing professionalization within the public service. It means to be professional means to work and project yourself in a way that demonstrates superior levels of acquired knowledge, skills, and competence, as well as exemplary conduct, commitment to the profession and its code of conduct. We said that even within the sector, we will contribute towards making sure that we've got a professional code of conduct. So therefore, professionalization means having a discipline, and then professionalism refers to an individual, whereas professionalization implies professionalization of the sector. It also entails a high work ethic and adherence to the standards and principles of specific work discipline and context, including qualifications, skills, competencies, and values. Finally, professionalization subjects all employees to a single dispensation of professional registration and regulation. It also recognizes various professional categories within the sector and subject them to registration with external regulated professional bodies. Yesterday we had a little bit of debate on whether we're going to go the self-regulation regulatory way, or we're going to go the statutory regulatory way. So this is going to be your decision as the sector on which way are we actually going. Are we self-regulating, or are we going to go the statutory way? All of them have got pros and cons. You had Minister saying that we are establishing too many structures. So it means that if we are going to be talking about another structure, we are going to also be facing a hurdle. But then, it is for us to actually put a proposal that we will also be able to defend. 5 pillars of implementing professionalization. First is the issue of recruitment and selection. So it means in the sector you need to recruit highly skilled people, induction and onboarding. Those that you have recruited, you need to make sure that you orientate them to their workplace. And then planning and performance management, you need to continuously manage the performance of people so that they can contribute to organizational goals, but then again, so that they can be able to improve their work. Continuous learning and professional development. This is very critical. We've mentioned that, for an example, the association's role will be to make sure that as the sector, we continue to exchange best practices. We've got conferences. We also have got policy briefs, and then finally career progression, succession planning, management of career incidents of heads of department. In our case, it will refer to managers within the sector. But then what I want to mention here is the issue of succession planning. We know that public service, they say, is graying. It means that young people are dwindling in the public service. We no longer have young people being attracted in the public service. So that has got very detrimental impact on us, on us as a sector, but then on the country as well. Because the people who are in the public service, if they are old, nature is going to take its course, because they will retire, they will pass on, and what is going to happen to the public service. So it's very important that we need to talk about the issue of succession planning as well. Proposals for implementing professionalization. First, it emphasizes merit-based recruitment and appointments. It means that we are saying that people must not be recruited because they belong to certain political parties, for an example, or because they know someone, but then they must be recruited because they know the job that is at hand. Review of pre-entry SMS. We know that in the public service, they have introduced the so-called Ukela course. You must get that certificate before you can apply for senior management. Revision of academic qualification requirements for entry into senior management. We need to actually make sure that you even quality assure the academic qualification. Also, the issue of recommending technical experts with relevant knowledge and skills, that is very important. And then we also need to collaborate with institutions of higher learning. I've already mentioned professional bodies, industry experts, and departments to undertake curricular development. So it means that as a sector, we need to also make sure that we contribute towards curriculum development by working with the institutions of higher learning. The proposals for implementing professionalization, potential public servants must participate in induction programs, and then there's a need for reorientation program. I've already talked about that. So this is something that we will also need to introduce in the sector. Am I not being done? No, I think you'll go next slide. In conclusion, as part of realizing a capable state, we are on a drive to rebuild the public service through promoting lifelong learning. We need to learn from each other as youth development practitioners. We also need to provide the necessary orientation to those who are entering our own practice or our own profession. And then this must also happen across different government departments in all spheres of government, including at local level. Like I see the local level guru moving in. Ndate Thapelo Maleke just entered. I think he's also been fighting this battle of professionalization, particularly at local level. In his State of the Nation's address, the president said, I said we would finalize the national framework towards implementation of professionalization of the public sector. The revised framework proposes fundamental reforms, including a stronger emphasis on merit-based recruitment and appointment, integrity testing before any individual joins the public sector, revising the tenure of the heads of department, and curriculum development for ongoing learning of the public servants. We expect this framework to be fully implemented across different government departments, state entities within the next year. So our sector is actually on course towards implementing the national framework for implementing for professionalization of the public service. I thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, I am going to maybe not open for discussions or questions. The reason for this is the framework presented was not developed by the department. As we have seen, it's National School of Government. Dr. Klagala just wanted to share the information to you, or just to indicate to you that what we are busy doing and focusing on as the youth sector is what's being planned overall for government, broadly speaking. So I'm therefore just requesting that obviously these discussions emanating from this to professionalize the youth sector, that we reserve it maybe for when we are into commissions so that we can resolve and take important decisions. So colleagues, I am just going to then propose that we have a body break, a quick coffee break. According to the program, commissions must commence 11:30, so it is in 15 minutes time. So I'm therefore requesting that let's have a 15-minute body break, coffee break, so that we can come back 11:30 and then, you know, divide the commissions, and then we can start with that. Thank you. Can we break? You can come to me. Thanks. Thank you, colleagues. We'll convene 15 minutes and then we immediately start with the commissions. Thank you. I've tried to call the colleagues outside. It seems the networking is working well, Nelmarie. They're networking during tea time as well. Can the colleagues outside just join us inside? We can continue the discussions in the commissions. Colleagues, I just want to say if we can maybe look at page 3 of the agenda. On page 3 of the program, there is the breakaway groups and the topics that we will need. Resolutions will be able to guide the work of the association. As you will see, there are 5 breaking groups that have been identified. The first one is what are the challenges facing youth workers and what needs to be done to address their issues. The second is the benefits of youth work training and education. And I want to merge number 2 with number 5, because number 5 and number 2 is basically capacity building. So group number 2 so number 1 remains number 1. Number 2 is going to deal on the issues of capacity building, which is clubbed together with 5, which is obviously capacity building. Then the third group will then look at the roadmap towards professionalization and also key partners. Because we know there is this association that has been launched, but obviously it's not going to be just the work of the association, but key partners need to be on board and play a role. And then the last breakaway group or commission, point 4, will then be on the operationalization of the association for youth development practitioners. So colleagues, there's basically then, if I can just repeat, 4 groups. Number 1, 2 and 5 is jointly together, and then the third group and the fourth group. So what I am proposing just as a guideline that we just maybe identify or mention maybe just at least 5 key resolutions, 5 key points on each breakaway group, which can therefore then guide the work of the association moving forward. I'm going to then also just propose, because obviously there's 4 groups, we will have 2 groups here in the front half, like group 1 and group 2 can meet here. There's ample space. And then behind the iron curtain there, we can have group 3 and 4 meeting together. But just then before we break, colleagues, I'm just going to call this one gentleman that briefly wants to make a presentation. So just before, for 5 minutes, colleagues, before we break into commissions, I'm going to ask him to come forward so long in the meantime. So just to remind you, we'll have group 1 on your right-hand side and group 2 here. And then at the back, in that corner, group 3 and 4, which will then deal with the topics 1, 2, 3, and 4. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Sure. Matla. How? Where are the practitioners? Matla. Matimba. Thank you very much, Program Director. You are the only one who doesn't know my name, but I will introduce myself. My name is Tapelo Malike. I'm the president of the South African Youth Chamber of Commerce, also leading the Local Government Youth Development Forum. I'm really going to emphasize the importance of professionalization of youth work. We have been in this journey for decades. We know what works and we know what does not work. So there are three things that I want to highlight. Where is Dr. B? Oh, okay. I think she's on a call. Colleagues, it's very important that as practitioners, we take youth development very serious. Don't be misled by Stats SA in terms of their report yesterday. I mean, we understand the game that they are playing, but the reality is that unemployment amongst young people, this country is swimming in a pool of youth unemployment, over 70%. And we are saying this because we deal with young people on a daily basis. Tina, we don't rely on newspaper articles. We deal with young people on a daily basis. And it's very important that as practitioners, when we are meeting like this to talk about professionalizing our work, we must not lose sight of the three elements. These are very fundamental. Number one, when you have your National Youth Policy 2030, you have your Integrated Youth Development Strategy 2025, you have the Youth Employment Accord and all sorts of documents that currently are gathering dust, because if they were effective, we would be talking something different. But I agree, we are a country that believes in ticking boxes. We don't believe in impact. That's why unemployment will forever rise. Don't worry about Stats SA. They are doing a PR exercise to say it went down. It is not true. Maybe it went down in other sectors, not amongst the young people. In terms of our population of young people, it went up. That 2% drop, I don't know where it comes from. Because I have personally seen companies retrenching people even yesterday. When Stats SA was announcing that unemployment went down, companies were retrenching people. So, as practitioners, there are three elements that we must cherish when we talk professionalization. One, you have this legislative element, which is pieces of this, whether you call it a policy, you call it an act, you call it a Youth Employment Accord. I'm sure a lot of you even forgot about the Youth Employment Accord that was signed by the acting president then, Kgalema Motlanthe. I'm sure even himself, he forgot that he signed it. So, when you are a practitioner, your fundamental duty is to seek implementation of these things. You must not only attend launches and get a free lunch. You must say, we want to see this in action. You know why I'm saying this? It's because when we signed the Youth Employment Accord in Soweto with Kgalema and all the ministers, one of the key elements that emerged is when the CEO of IDC committed 3.7 billion, which today, not even a cent, was ever realized by a young person in South Africa. But people were clapping hands. We must stop clapping hands. We must begin to say this. We are practitioners. We want to see action. Young people must benefit from our efforts. So that's number one, legislation. Let's make sure as practitioners that whatever piece of legislation that exists, we follow it and ensure that it is practical. It must translate into action. Number two, you are sitting here talking professionalization of youth work. Where are the sitters? Because that's what a budget, skills development. Where are they? They are not here. So are we here to waste time? Again. That's why I like Germans. I've got German friends. I ask them, why is it that I've never heard of you hosting a conference? But we are not a conferencing nation. We produce German machines. That's our core business. Lona, you can host an AIDS conference for the whole week, go Durban. From Monday up to another Monday. Everyone comes to Durban. It's an international AIDS conference. Go Durban. The whole week. Well, it's good for tourism. What happens after that conference? Everyone goes back home. And they go back and infect each other more. Have unprotected sex. It was just a talk shop. So we must stop being a conferencing nation. Practitioners, you know what the word practice means? It means everything that you do must be practical. You must not theorize. You are practitioners. Whatever you do must be practical. So the second element that I was highlighting, Dr. B, I'll go to the first one, is that we cannot professionalize youth development without the involvement of the sitters. They are sitting with large billions of money that is meant for skills development. That skills development must start from practitioners themselves. I'm not sure how many people have graduated at UNISA with a qualification in youth development. I don't want this thing that when I'm active in the municipal space, in local government, and if I can tell you what's happening there, you are going to cry, so I don't want to make you cry. When somebody is useless in a municipal space and is in the payroll, they relegate that person to youth development. Because municipalities think that youth development is a useless space. And then you expect unemployment to drop, it will forever rise. Now, we cannot professionalize youth development without the involvement of the sitters. And I'm saying this because we need those resources for capacity building. It must start with practitioners. We need capacitated practitioners so that a capacitated practitioner can be able to open up opportunities for young people to also be capacitated. But if a practitioner himself or herself does not cherish an element of education and skills development, how on earth will that person open up opportunities for young people? The last element, and then I'll be sitting down. We cannot professionalize youth development without the involvement of private sector. I hosted managers of CSI, Dr. B, last week Friday, Vodacom and everyone. I told them that young people buy airtime and data like nobody's business. What is the return on that investment? And when they were presenting what they are doing, all that I saw is PR exercise, not impact. So, program director, I hope you are not irritated. I'm an activist. So, we are here to say we cannot professionalize without private sector because this monies, the budgets of CSI, budgets of foundations, trusts, whatever they call them, those budgets must ensure that our youth development work prospers. That's how we can be a prosperous nation. I'm not sure how many of you have seen the copy of the Constitution of South Africa. It talks about prosperity. in the preamble. So we need to work towards prosperity. When you wake an American up 12 midnight and say, why do you wake up every morning? They say, I wake up every morning to work towards achieving an American dream. When you wake a South African up 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, not 12 midnight, because that time they are not yet asleep. So 6 o'clock in the morning, you wake them up. Why are you waking up? Where are you going? What are you going to achieve? You'll get countless responses. But in those responses, one of them will be, Kilo apply la 350 asasa. A young person. We are such a depressing nation. We relegate young people to a 350 per month. When Indians are creating young billionaires and millionaires, it's compulsory in India now that young people must start their own businesses. So, practitioners, I'm here to challenge you to ensure that youth development becomes a priority in this country. And it's your duty to ensure that youth development is a priority. And when we say youth development, we are saying this in the context of a mounting and, unacceptable levels of gender-based violence and femicide. Young couples are killing each other. And we have normalized this. We cannot normalize this as practitioners. So we have a mammoth task to change the status quo. And thank you very much for this opportunity. Go all the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tapelo. Thank you for the message of support. Colleagues, let us start with the commissions. Let me just remind number 1, number 2, 3 behind the iron curtain there, and then 4 there. I'm going to obviously just kindly asking you to divide yourself in 4 groups. I'm not going to say count 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 in order to break up in the 4 groups. So please use your discretion, see how many are here and there, trying to equally divide yourself amongst in the 4 groups. And then please also appoint a facilitator, scribe, rapporteur, and then colleagues of the department will also join each of the groups. And then according to the program, the commissions must come back to plenary 12:30. So that is only 40 minutes. So let's make a determination at 12:30. Obviously, you will give an indication if you need 10, 15 minutes more. But let's aim then for the time as indicated on the program. But we'll get feedback from you to still give more time where needed. Thank you.
create policies like the issue of the 30% set aside, and create bills on how departments are supposed to navigate as a white paper and whatnot. Now the issue is that I want to speak to much to make an example of the issue of the 30% set aside, which is for young people in business and whatnot. Now. In line with my work, you have a political head to go out, address young people and tell them of the 30% set aside, agreed upon policies there and everything. When you go to the
NYTA is a board, but then also have a minister in the office of the president. When you come to province, there are youth units, don't even want to call them youth directorates or youth desks in the premier's offices. Then you come to the municipalities, you have them in the mayor's office, and they're dysfunctional because there is no uniform approach towards these directorates. So we must find a way as to say, if we are saying that at the level of the local, like for example national, if we are saying that it must be in the presidency, it must be in the presidency, it must have its own ABDDG in the presidency who deals with youth development. Then
can I stop you there? Police, the issue of job descriptions.
There is another critical issue that is faced with youth workers, that when our political heads make pronouncements, there is no one that goes to check whether it is actually there for implementation for young people to get access. Now, when you also go to young people generally as young people, is that a young person will have a company, young people do that all the time. I did it. I still do it. It's the number of red tapes.
like
Yes,
for
we know.
example, okay, let me give you an example in the local level where I am now. We are in the mayor's office. We are a youth directorate in the mayor's office with 14 staff members, but we are dysfunctional. Because you get departments that have got a youth budget in the department, you get a chamber who says that I'm a youth development manager. You've got a youth director.
Must go look for another document that they must pay for. If they pay for opening a company, they must then go pay for getting documents to support the company. If it's not that, it's SARS. If it's not that, it's another document. For a young person that is unemployed, look at the process that they have to undergo to make sure that they have a company in good standing all the time to make sure that they're able to apply. It's not just that, it's the issue of getting to universities. Sometimes we can't give you a bursary today and it kicks into the system to make sure that you are then able to study. You need to raise the fund, maybe it's 1.5 or 2.5, to make sure that you're accepted by the system before we can come in and kick in and say that you are now paying. There's a lot of red tape, and I think if the government would minimize the red tapes and allow young people to have some leeway in some of the things, then maybe we'll find that young people will be able to do the things that they want to do the right way and not have restraints in trying to find out who they are and establish themselves. And I am not saying that we should always blame government. I'm not in that sense saying that, but I'm saying if government would minimize, when our political heads speak, you clap head because you understand, no, we're there now. But when it goes to implementing minutes, no one goes down to check if what they have said is actually being done.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you correctly, please say the policy that does not get workshopped and get entrenched, obviously with inputs and outputs. From there, there has to be a continuous improvement, obviously, with youth being part of it, and then results show, or action shows, and then whatever that needs to happen. There's nothing like that.
So your duty is to somehow find ways as to how
how do you want to see the association operating, then we will take that, whatever that we will be presenting with the input of the entire delegates, we're going to put it into practice. Then we put a document. So we're trying to build a document based on what you guys are saying. So it's in a nutshell, it's like more of a consultation to say, we want to start this document, but we do not want to, just to impose on you. Yes, we want to work with you throughout the journey so that you form part and parcel of this process. So did I help? Yes. If you want,
according to my mandate, the mandate of Public Works, which is being the landlord of government departments. So a person who is sitting at DSD will do your development a different way than me, but will be having something that is an umbrella to say, in government, this is how you do it, but then you do it according to your mandate. So I think it leads to these trainings and workshops will lead to uniformity. There will be uniformity in the space of development.
Maybe as to shorten it, we can say development of guidelines for structured training. Yes, structured training, development of guidelines for structured training for youth practitioners.
I think when he is presented, will help him with expanding the points. Where we feel maybe here we need to expand further. This is what we'll do. What we're saying now, we'll expand the points.
Maybe in the bracket you can say, for instance, facilitation skills. What else? You talked about facilitation skills and what skills are needed for its facilitation and what.
Even training, because when, for example, especially them
communication skills as well, the skills that are needed. We have partnered with them. They have offered us the teachers and all that, and then they will also be assisting with the capacity building trainings or workshops for the youth practitioners across the country. That's why we have something like the capacity building workshop presentation, but unfortunately they are having a board meeting because they are financially incapacitated of the government. And then the other organization is the department. Our department, we have, because the minister is responsible for youth development, she will be the one giving us the political support and ensuring that we are a professionalized service. So we've also got resources from the department. The department procured venue and cater and the sound system and everything, the production company. So as it stands right now, the association is sitting with the 0.5. So for the association, I'm not giving answers, but for the association to be fully operational, something must happen.
Are we going to be able to assist young practitioners and also our NGOs? Because I believe, for the example, I will continuously mention Region G as the one of the poorest region across the province of Gauteng. We are having a vast land. That land is being occupied by people who are bringing shacks and so forth. If we are having youth practitioners who will establish, making sure that there are NPOs who are dealing with agriculture within our society. There are, in those NPOs, there must be young people who will be undergoing training for land surveying, geologists, and what so forth. I think those are programs that they can really assist in moving forward.
It's never been a seal. It's not some concept. We appreciate it. Yes, colleagues. We talk about the structure as we are needed. We'll talk about the operational issues. the association will talk about, obviously, will relate to the issues of membership. And then we see how best can we Sanko Youth Congress. We have an association which is still new, so we are trying to get it on the ground. We are just your input or your contribution to that.
Okay. First and foremost, thank you for this opportunity. My input into this the challenge number one is facing especially as community. Yes, we know some youth unemployment is too much, which is leading young people to drugs, and young people become violent. So this program, I think it will be much magnificent or even more impactful if it is involved outside.
When you look for stats, you get stats of one and the same people in all these places. One and the same people. It's not actually going across or targeting as many young people as it should, because it's only getting access to one and the same people. One person that had applied in NYD, you will find it, applied in CETA, you will find that they've applied in CI, you will find that they applied elsewhere. One and the same person.
Now getting the funding all the way.
Yes, and now when you get stats of the 11111, it's actually the one person, not, because now it's spread across. I think if one of our, if government just channels it to one place, then we can keep record of how many, in clear terms, of young people that have been assisted, rather than having a duplication of one and the same person.
Yeah, for instance, in government departments, they do monitor the issues of not access, the issues of inclusion, like how many people with disabilities one government department has. They do have a mechanism at the human resource development, human resource section, to calculate the staff of the department, how many people with disabilities at this department. So they can monitor that as well to say how many young people have benefited in terms of our procurement, in terms of employment. That can be used to monitor whether government departments are complying with whatever they should be doing.
Okay. My hand was up when she talks about channeling funding to maybe one sector. Yeah, that one I will not agree with you, because the T's and C's differs of different organizations in funding. The model or the standard, it will differ. The guidelines will differ, just like the bursaries. When we provide young people or learners with bursaries, we know each organization's, the guidelines, the requirement differ. So I don't think it will be easy to monitor that. It will be a complex issue. So what I'm talking about when I said we need to go out there, educate, empower, engage, talk to young people, we need to understand, because young people differs. You cannot equate young people in rural areas as well as young people in urban areas. You won't understand that. The need will differ. So hence I'm saying, as government, we sometimes impose. Yes, we will say government tries. We don't want to try. We want to excel. We want to do, we want to excel. So government tries by giving young people 350. What are you going to do with 350? I will be frustrated if somebody gives me 350 for the whole month. I can use that in one day. It will be finished. Why didn't government go out there, engage, talk to young people? Young people, what is that we can do? At least they should form organizations, give young people money, or start forming we in previous times we had Babelere. Some people can sew, young people can do things, they are so competent. They can sew, others can group themselves, form a car wash. I mean, it's making money for themselves. You don't have to give somebody money. You need to teach people to do money for themselves. And young people are
in a certain sector for how long and everything. I think those are some of the things that we must look at. And the other issue that he touched, basically, it's also the issue of inclusivity or inclusion. So then it relates to us. How do you want to see the structure in terms of the marketing and everything? Thank you very much.
Okay, in terms of the structure, I think provided the explanation. In terms of the structure, I think we should do with the, since this is national, I was thinking we should have a structure of which is national, provincial, and then also local, because there is no way in the ground, last 7 corner, we can be able to go national again, just shoot straight. But can we have that structure, essential? And then within the structure, we should have a structure as a accommodator department. I noticed to we are a higher education. For instance, we should have somebody from higher education, and higher education should be able to recognize also skills development centers, because at most of skills development centers, skills
painting, plumbing, plastering, nail and beauty, business and financial management, and. So she said Uguti, youth practitioners need to go out there and do awareness for young for our youth. That's what we do exactly. But how many organizations are doing that? We train and then we empower, because there is no employment anyway. If we are waiting and thinking that these youth will get employment, there's no employment. So what we did as the organization was that we went back and sat as the board and said that what is it that we can do for our youth since there is no employment since COVID. So what we do is that we upskill these unemployed youth, and then we register them. We register their businesses for free. She mentioned the red tapes. When they want funding, they will be requested to give BE certificates or tax clearance, your CIDP if you are in construction, NHRPC, and we are talking about unemployed youth who doesn't have money to gather all those documents or the compliance. So what we do as the organization is that we register those businesses for free. We teach them how to tender, to write winning tenders and proposals, how to write their business plans for free. We do their business, their BE certificates, their tax clearance, and but we are saying as the organization, how many organizations are doing that, making sure that there is an impact, and how many government departments are supporting those initiatives, because there's no support anywhere. We just handed over about 180 startup kits to these beneficiaries who started with us through our skills development. And
where is the location? In whose office must it be accessible to? Because we must have a point of entrance. Departments, the challenge of departments, honestly, departments are, how can I put it? They are not having a proper concrete direction of how you can place this structure in. Let's start here. Let's put time frames of how this can be established properly. Nationally, is the Department of Women, Youth and People persons living with disability. Let's say we are locating the structure there, national. Then, provincial, this structure, where can we locate it? So that even because provincial spheres, you are from water and sanitation dealing with youth. There's human settlement dealing with youth. There is public, rural land and agriculture dealing with youth. So I think let's put it in operational logic. In provincial level, let it be proposed to be sent to the office of the Premier, because there's a directorate of the youth. Then the directorate of the youth in the office of premium, since it's the accounting office, it's under the main administration, then they can get membership from all these respective departments in the provincial department, because every department in province, sometimes you find that in human settlement there's a youth coordinator there, in economic development, in DSD there's a youth directorate in DSD, in all social development. I think let's operationalize it logically, like to say that this foundation membership and also the overseer and its machinery will be located responsible in the office of the PRIL. They are not going to local. Local is two spheres. You have a district, you have a city, a metro, and you have a local municipality. Now, there, I'm afraid to say at the office of the executive mayor, but I think we can propose it to go to the office of the municipality manager.
Qualification to professionalize. So the qualifications are professionalized. The first thing is that then we are allowed, you are taken serious with the work that you're doing. That's the first benefit.
We are how much more do you need?
2 minutes. Or you can extend.
How much do you need? You can extend.
Yeah, 5 minutes.
We are very active here.
All right. So the issue of qualification is that now you. But the qualification should also be not just as a 3-year degree. Colleagues were saying you can also have short courses that allows entry levels for people that are already practicing at community level to actually get qualified to facilitate this kind of work. So that part is very important in order for the work to be taken seriously. You need uniformity in terms of youth work at government level and youth work at NGO level.
Who's chairing? You are chairing, madam. Or she's chairing?
No.
Yeah, please,
NGO.
Across the sector, actually, across the sector, youth development. Across, uniformity across the sector. Uniformity
across the youth sector.
Across the youth sector.
Process of this Indaba, let's limit ourselves to that time that a young person spends outside their normal. What do we do with that time? I think that's our space for now. But we are not undermining the fact that there are other players, but they play at another level.
Do you need more time? I can give you up to 15 minutes max.
Yeah. Please. Sure. So, can I request that we move to identifying key partners for the roadmap to be somehow successful? I don't want to repeat myself from what I said, but I did highlight we cannot professionalize without some of those as SETAs, sector education and training authorities, because we're talking skills development. We need to capacitate the practitioner before we think of young people, so that when young people approaches a practitioner must be well capacitated. And to be capacitated, it doesn't mean you must be a jack of all trades, but you must have capacity to be able to say to young people, because you are interested in the arts, there's this thing called CAF-SETA, here are their contacts, or they go to their website. That's the type of capacity. We are not saying be a jack of all trades, but a simple capacity to just refer young people to relevant institutions. So can I request that we include that one in terms of key partners? Sector education and training authorities. I think we've got now, 21 of them now?
To be a challenge. If other people are able to invent cars, it's a challenge, but this challenge is drawing within some force that says I can do it, because it's something that is calling, which you feel you can do it 24 hours. The reason why we check, when is lunch? And then instead of working amnesty in a meeting that is scheduled for 9, then we come at 10, and it's something that is acceptable. And even the chairperson or the meeting convener says, let's wait for them. Then why did I have to wake up in the morning to be here? There is a lot to learn. As long as we still say,
to ensure that when they reach maybe grade 12, grade 10, they started by grade 10, the learner should be able to say, this is my capacity as a young person, and this is the kind of and this is my capacity, and with my capacity, this is what I'm able to do. Because it's very frustrating to meet a young person who has finished matric, says, I want to act, but they don't even have, they can't even fix smiling. You understand? So we need basic education for that reason. And also, when we talk of basic education, I think also need to bring in each sector in government needs to bring their own partners. If we are going to talk about, fine, we do have the sitters on our side, but then there's also they fall under. But then we also have key partners that also have that would have had a budget to say that I can spend it on this. So we need to involve institutions, private institutions aligned to a sector. For example, the energy and mineral sector. When they are there, you tell them, okay, fine, I know we tell them you want money, but if you say to them, I need 10 bursaries, and those 10 bursaries is for this and this, they are able to do that. But then if the person doesn't understand where you're coming from, because they also need to be capacitated as a private sector, when you explain to them what you need it for, when you bring them to forums like this one, they get to understand that it's not about wanting bursaries, but it contributes to this kind of a thing. So key partners would be the private sectors aligned to the institutions, to the government departments that we work for.
Interviews were done by the board of sites. This site that is here, somewhere mid-range. I was looking, I think I was 25 or 26, and I happened to overhear this other guy saying, no man, this one we can give her this amount of money, she's still young. I'm telling you, if Jeff was here, I was going to remind him, Jeff, you are
implementing it. So I think they are solid and need to be in the space. And when I speak about civil society, I would say representative of a diverse collective of South Africans. So that means those that represent the financial aspect of capacitating young people, identities like LGBTQIA, the mental health space, disabilities, cross-cutting cultural ethnicities, races, and we need young people, civil societies who work with formal and informal spaces. So I think representative of a diverse collective of civil society organizations.
We are in agreement. Maybe thing has changed.
that board, and I didn't even have a car, so the other board member gave me.
It is broad. When you just say civil society, some people will just limit it. But
Yes.
let's say broad-based or inclusive civil society participation.
I also think let's not use the word representative, because I think even at private sector, for ease of coordination, like you need to target whether you are saying you're going for booster or you are going for sector-specific representative. Yeah. We need to be very practical, because we can't just engage the whole private sector, we can't engage the broader civil society. So at least let's start with the representatives of those sectors.
Representative, you captured me. Yeah. Any other input, colleagues, around the identity?
So it's Now you are part of this and you know what you need to move forward.
Yes.
And you are like on the side.
And from to the provinces on the ground. It's there. So we go there, we monitor the youth. So it's a problem.
Institutions that we need to have them on board so that once we've identified the requisite skills, then they're able to give us that. But I also think I'm happy that you also mentioned some of the subgroups of society, like your LGBTQI. It's very important that we also include them, because certain approaches don't work in certain subgroupings.
Yes.
I'm also now thinking of traditional leadership as well.
Home affairs. You must take at least some sort of communication and identify those that we really need. Department of DTI, and form a committee. It can be on WhatsApp. That is a start. We are saying now we want crown forces, crown breakers. When you invite, the same way you invited us here, we invite each other, saying that let's target rural areas. When you come from a certain organization, I come from employment, obviously, I'll come with something. I'll come with something. Someone from DTI in terms of registering. And we are implementing now. We're not talking about anything. We have a time frame already. This is our WhatsApp. Let's meet. Let's try to pursue the DG or the minister of the hosting department now. Please invite us, because I cannot just come and say we have a meeting on WhatsApp. We discuss that we are targeting this rural area today. But when it comes up high as an invite saying that we are targeting, we have different departments. The youth there, if you are person in agriculture, you know what you are offering. This is the start. This thing of having the papers and talking about them and having a preliminary paper is going to end there. We don't know where are they going to take them. We have Mr. Hanaka. They're going to talk them and go all around and consult and say this is what can change it. But if we can have some sort of take advantage that you are from here, you are from here, can we please ask us from the department, ask us from the organization, and the department commits that I come with this, then it comes easier. Then we are saying we want to implement. Forget about the policy. Policy will find us on the way while we are busy running on the ground. Thank you very much.
So, yeah. So are we agreeing that this one? Yes. Our names, the actions, takers. Okay, I'm writing my name first. I'm for that. Okay. My number is 0739591029. Who is going to be our lead? Should I still be at the lead? Oh, no. Right. Who is going to create our Hazard? Anyone who's going to act. I'm going to do it. Wow. I'm taking the full by the phone.
The challenge with me, the challenge with me is very one. I'm not necessarily from the youth or anything. I'm from the department. We don't have youth section. I'm from IT. My daily job is IT, so I'm here for compliance.
Offered through someone like the GIZ. Why not? So I think they can be included in the conversation, not necessarily to lead, but perhaps to come forward with strategy and funds and resources. So international development,
international agencies. Thank you very much for raising it. I think, I'm not sure if you want to take us through your summary or you want to shock us. No, I want to take you through okay. Yeah, no. I would prefer. Shock us! Yeah, let's hear what you are going to say.
Okay, colleagues. On top, I've named the heading for our topic, for our roadmap towards professionalization and key partners. And the first thing we said that there must be aid.
But now when they come within the security, because I get so I come with
Matla.
huge hard wall. I urge you to look like.
Yes, we are.
One number.
I'm promising you because I know it's possible. I always look on the possibility side of the Poland. Yeah. So yeah. Thank you. So who's going to talk about that? Yes. Yes. I can see. I think
management organizations. So we need to have youth development legislation, which will also speak to the youth development practice. NYD Act is about the establishment of the NYD. It's not youth development legislation.
You know what? Let's also take point number 2, which we talked about practice, and then talk about
Okay, Commission 3, Commission 4, can you please join the plenary? Colleagues, just before I give to Commission 1 or Group 1, I just quickly want to also give feedback because as we know, there is still some youth practitioners that are online. So the online delegates also made inputs. I just want to reflect briefly on inputs from the colleagues that were online. And then I will hand over to Group 1. Can I maybe ask that the rapporteur of Group 1, 2, 3, and 4, can you join me here on stage? There's 4 seats. Thank you. The 4 rapporteurs, if you can join me kindly, it will assist us with the feedbacks. Thank you, Group 4. Can you join us? Okay, yes. Okay, colleagues, in short, from the online participants, we did not just focus on one single commission, but we just had an overview and made some inputs on some of them. So just to briefly indicate on the Group 1, which dealt with the challenges and solutions, from the online it was indicated that one of the key challenges is that graduates within youth development that obtained like a Bachelor of Youth Development degree struggle to get employment, obviously due to the lack of the profession not being professionalized. So the looking for job opportunities was indicated as a big challenge. And what was also highlighted as a challenge was lack of political will. Lack of political will for the professionalization of youth work. So on the flip side, solutions, what was reflected on is obviously to professionalize the youth work sector, but also what was reflected is the finalization of the South African Youth Development Act will also move forward in finding solutions to the challenges and push forward the agenda for the professionalization of youth work. Then on Commission or Group 2, capacity building, what was indicated that there should be short-term courses that should be developed for capacitating and keeping youth workers updated, with latest policies and frameworks. For example, in 2020, the National Youth Policy 2030 was launched. So there is that continuous training, for example, through short-term training programs that must be developed. And they also indicated that this one would bring on board veteran youth workers, that they can also play a role in the sector in capacitating and training up-and-coming youth workers. So Dr. B, they've made room for you as a veteran youth worker. And also, a very important aspect is, which also would be addressed in the professionalization, is the standardization that they indicated for qualifications for a youth worker. And then just lastly, I want to indicate on the key partners, which was also what Group 3 were looking at. On key partners, they indicated, for example, the South African Council for Social Service Professionals. The CITAS was also indicated as a key partner. Also the Department of Public Service and Administration, the School of Government, research institutions was also highlighted as key partners and stakeholders in the work of the professionalization. And then lastly, I just want to give to one of the colleagues online, Dr. Morwe. There's just an input that she would want to make. You can, the floor is yours, Dr. Morwe. Dr. Morwe. Colleagues, that was just the inputs that was given from the participants that joined us online and still with us online. I'm now going to hand over to Group 1, if the rapporteur then can come and give feedback.
Good afternoon, colleagues.
Representation, we don't see gender balance.
Very true.
Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Temba Nkosi. I'll be representing U Group 1. So basically what we have discussed is the challenges that we are facing as youth practitioners and what needs to be done to address these issues. So basically one of the first issues that we looked at was the lack of resources and the lack of support. So basically we all have these ideas and programs that we wish to implement, but then there's no support from our seniors and or there's no resources to implement these programs. By resources we mean could be financially or in terms of other avenues that could make these programs materialize. One of the second issues that we looked at was institutionalization of youth development in all spheres of government. I mean, in one institution there's a clerk, in one there's a manager, in one there's a director. So now the level of communication is being disturbed in terms of there is no uniform in terms of we should be graded or be on levels that are equally on the same level so that it's easier to facilitate and coordinate youth development work. Another issue is the implementation of policies, strategies, and these frameworks. We all have these papers and bills and everything, but it's there on paper, but it's never implemented. There's no one that comes back and monitors if these are implemented. There's no monitoring tool on how far we've gone in terms of monitoring these. Another challenge that we looked at, sorry, I'm saying the challenge and the solution at the same time. So the other one is interference of political heads. So basically we can't say it's just interference, but there's no stability as well, because for the next 3 years it's this political head in charge, and then we have these programs and plans in place, and then after a certain amount of time the leadership is changed, and then the new leadership that comes in with a different perspective and ideas. So now we need to go back to the drawing board and start planning all over again. And then when it's time to implement again, there's changes once again. So I think that's one of the other challenges that we are facing. One of the other challenges that we as practitioners and the youth are facing is the issue of we do not recognize ourselves and the work that we do. I think we need to love the work that we do in order for the youth to recognize us and be able to participate fully, because we just go there to tick boxes and for compliance that I've done this in terms of what I was supposed to do for performance, but we're not doing it for the change and for the benefit of the youth and to make sure that they are uplifted and they benefit fruitfully so, and it changes their lives in terms of what the programs and initiatives are doing. And then another issue that we looked at is we do not relate with all stakeholders, nor do we know what our roles are. We are all working in silos and we are not interacting and working together to achieving one goal. Everyone is doing their own thing in their own corner, and at the end of the day we end up duplicating certain items, and the youth ends up losing interest and they stop attending whatever programs we are doing because they feel like this department has done this before, this department is doing it again, but there's no end result. We keep doing the same thing over and over again. And another thing is the lack of awareness. We tend to not go to the ground and find out what the youth really wants or what they love or what they wish to do. We plan things on our own, but in terms of we look at things from a top bottom instead of from a bottom up, because we do things from in an ideal world, whereas in a practical world it does not happen like that. We need to go out there and engage with the youth, ask them what they'd love to have, where their interests are, what they wish to become, what they wish to do. I think that would help us a lot, because having them or consulting with them, having them on board would make these things much easier to implement. And then in terms of the 30% set aside, the policies are there, but they are not linked to the PFMA. So when it's time for implementation, supply chain comes back and says no, but this is not in line with our policies. So it becomes a difficulty for them to implement. So when our leaders go out there, they promise this 30%, and then when the youth comes back to the youth offices and say, but the 30% is there in policies, it has been spoken about, but how are we implementing it? It's not possible because it's not interlinked with the PFMA. So I think these policies should align with each other. And then the other thing is the red tapes. We should try and eliminate red tapes in terms of youth opportunities, because a young person opens a business but then they can't really operate because of all these red tapes in terms of compliance, the documents they need, and they do not have funding to be able to acquire these documents. And then another issue is the issue of bursaries. Young people are being promised bursaries from national level, but then there's no money that's being allocated to locals so that these bursaries can be given to young people. And then the other issue is having the red tape of the processes that take place before these bursaries are allocated. So a person needs money now for registration, but because of the process that needs to take place, they end up not going to school because they could not raise the money for registration fee. And then I think one of the most important issues that you raised was the issue of monitoring. I think there are no proper monitoring tools that monitor all these plans that we wish to achieve. It is just there on pen and paper, and it is there in policies, but no one comes back and monitors them. We are told this is what is expected, this is what you need to do, and then it just ends there. No one comes back and reviews, have you done this, how far are you, what are the challenges, how can we assist you? And then I think another issue that we raised is youth workers need to commit themselves to the work that they do, because once they do that, it will be easier for them to commit to be hands-on and work fully. And then I think one of the most important issues was the issue of funding. It is difficult for young people to get funding because of red tape, so they end up losing interest in seeking these opportunities because they get turned away, or there are duplication of the processes, because there's NYTA, there's CEDA, there's a whole lot of funding institutions. So if there could be a uniform system, or it could be redirected to one institution where it have subdivisions on, if you want to fund this, you can go to this section, if you want to fund this, you can go to this section, it might be easier. And then lastly, lastly, the issue of corruption. The money is allocated to certain individuals, but then it never gets there. So we need to bridge that gap so that when money is allocated to certain individuals, we make sure it gets there and it does not get lost along the way. And then time management. I think we should focus more on this, because an example would be the meeting was supposed to start at 9, but people arrived at 10. The facilitators were like, no, let's wait for them and then we'll start at 10. We should start doing things the proper way, be ethical, be professional, because how do you want to be professional if you can't manage our own time? And then lastly, older government officials do not, but tend to not take or recognize advice or ideas from young people, because they feel like, what do these young people know? What do they have to offer? I've been in the industry for way more years than they have. But then I think times are changing, so please start listening to us, the youth, and then maybe we could be able to change a few things. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Group 1. I must now be very time conscious now. Thank you for that, the reminder. Before we go to group 2, I just wanted to ask anyone from group 1 that maybe think something was missing, something very important that you would want to add to what was presented by your rapporteur. You can just raise your hand if there's anyone who was in group 1. Okay, I see one hand. You can use shop steward voice maybe. Or the mic is coming. Were you in group 1? Okay. Okay, colleagues, they say no, you were represented. Yes, let me say if it's really an important, something that was not captured by the scribe. Please, can you then just briefly make one point?
Thank you very much, Chair. I think the issues were all captured, but the only issue was the fact that on the categorization of workers, to say others, they are at a clerk level, others at a deputy director level, others at a admin level. So in terms of the remuneration, they should be uniform. And the other thing was that all government departments must have, if it's a directorate, it should be a directorate all over. If it's a chief director level, it should be at a chief director level in all government departments, not others having just a desk, without a category of that kind of person in terms of levels.
Okay, no, thank you. Thank you, Group 1. Yes? Okay, it's noted. Thank you. Group 2, rapporteur.
Been an omission, but then the people that are in the group to add on the it's in our interest. The people that are capturing here from the commission so that all the issues can be captured. We are not saying open a discussion. We are saying make an addition if you thought that the chair missed something, not discussion. Thank you.
You are noted, honorable member. Thank you so much, colleagues. Group 2 was dealing with the following topics, and that is benefits of youth work training and education, as well as topic number 5, capacity building workshops, training for youth workers. And these are the 5 key resolutions that we concluded on, is that the benefits of professionalizing youth work is that you are creating a criteria of skills and knowledge that are required to be in this space. When you do that, you are taking the work seriously. And whomever requires those capacities and skills will have to adhere to a particular set of criteria to be able to adequately recognize the skills that this person will be given to you. So that's the first benefit. But we are also saying that another form of benefit is that it becomes an opportunity to skill young people who are already participating in this space in our communities. This means that you can have community colleges and TVET colleges offering short courses that the learners young people can proudly own a particular certificate saying that this person is adequately trained on this particular skills and qualities and can deliver those particular skills. That's a very important benefit in terms of skilling our young people in our society. But we're also saying on the second point that there will be uniformity across all sector of all youth sector development. That will be government, NGOs, the private sector as a whole. Then you are avoiding all of this haphazard interventions of people saying they are offering youth skills, but you cannot measure it. You cannot assess impact. So as a result, generally people don't take the work seriously. It becomes an exercise of keeping young people busy and not necessarily giving them any value in their lives. So that uniformity creates an important point in terms of part of the benefits of capacity and training and education within the space. Uniformity in itself gives an identity of the work itself. Wherever you are, if you are a practitioner, they would know, everybody would know that this is what you come to bring in the space. It strengthens impact and allows us to measure that particular impact, which means it becomes scientific in its nature. A researcher can come and determine the input that you are making to society and what changes can be learned from that. The third point, colleagues, is that opportunities, in terms of capacity building, continuous capacity building, one of the benefits that we have identified is that even if you are qualified, but because we're living in a 4IR space, we're living in a space that young people are infested with all kinds of social issues. There's a barrage of issues that are dealing with. So the capacity at which one must learn and adapt and absorb new knowledge is very important. Hence, that continuous capacity building exercise. So space must be given for young people who are in this sector to be able to go to international forums, national forums, to get to understand what are the latest trends within this particular space. So that that person can come back and give this knowledge to the fellow young people that they are living with within their own communities. The last one, colleagues, and very much important, and I think it was touched by the first group, is that professionalizing helps standardize remuneration packages. It means that we can have our practitioners being able to be measured in terms of provision of remuneration, where their specialization and capability lie based on this qualification that they'll be having. So, and that can be standardized across board. I don't know if I should say my colleagues will add or not add, because that was a contentious issue in the House. But I'll leave it there as for me. Thank you so much.
I think you captured the group very well. Thank you for that. As one of the things that you've alluded to, like we've heard yesterday from Commonwealth, they will be embarking and holding various youth work summits, seminars, which is ideal for us to keep sharpening us as youth practitioners. Thank you for that. Group 3. Can the rapporteur of Group 4, you can come and join me, please. You can come and be seated next to me. And I hope it's a female rapporteur.
Yeah, good afternoon, colleagues. I'm here to represent Group 3. The topic or the heading, it's on the roadmap towards professionalization and key partners. I would like to first outline what does youth development entails. Youth development is a process that prepares young people to meet challenges of adolescence and adulthood and achieve their full potential. It is promoted through activities and experiences that help the youth develop socially, physically, ethically, and emotionally. So as Group 3, in all we're doing, in line with the heading, we're looking at things that will be in line with what youth development must entail. So we said first, as Group 3, there must be a definition to outline, to say what is it that we really are as those people who are dealing with youth development. Then we decided that we should be known as, or we should be known as youth development practitioners, which will be individuals who will be dealing with youth development. That's how we should be known. But then we said that as youth development practitioners, in order for us to achieve what youth development entails, we must have support. One of the things that we've realized that was not there is the issue of an act or a bill from Parliament that deals with youth development. We realized that there is no act that deals with youth development. Then we said that Parliament must enact legislation that is going to deal with youth development practice entirely. In that legislation, the youth development practice must be outlined to say what is it that this youth development practice entails. We must also develop guiding principles and functions that will guide us towards this thing of achieving the youth development practice. We further said that youth development practice must be depoliticized because it is an administrative function and it's apolitical in nature. We are saying this recognizing the fact that across all the 3 spheres of government, you are national, provincial, and local, youth development, youth directorates or youth units are located in political offices. The presidency, in the premier's office, in the mayor's office, and we think that's part of the reason why they are dysfunctional. So we are saying they must be taken out of political offices and be taken to apolitical spaces because they are administrative in nature. There are key partners that must be taken into account or that we must partner with in order for us to achieve what we must achieve as youth development practitioners. Amongst the key partners is the SETAs, or your sector education and training authorities, across all sectors, all the 26 of them, depending on the kind of work that we'll be doing as youth development practitioners. We further said that we must also work with private institutions which are dealing with youth development work. Also, private sector institutions which are aligned to specific departments in line with their mandate. We must also work with them. There must also be broad-based and an all-inclusive representation of civil society organizations across all sectors. Like we must have partnership with sectors inclusive of young people in business, young people in sports, arts and culture, young people in religious sector, the FBI sector, LGBTQ, all the sectors. As long as it's issues of youth development, we must be able to align with them in this thing of doing youth development practice. We also said that we must be able to work with cooperative governance and traditional affairs for administrative purposes in order to access various traditional councils. We took into account the fact that despite having traditional councils, like you are Contralesa, there is a need to work with the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs because it has access to all traditional authorities, because your Contralesa might not be able to access all traditional councils because others do not subscribe to Contralesa or are not members of Contralesa. But when we work with COGTA as a department, you are able to reach out to all traditional councils so that we can be able to talk to the issues of youth development practice. We are saying this because we realize that in some instances, we are struggling to implement or to work on issues of youth development in some areas because of red tapes that we face from traditional councils. But if we work together with them, we'll be able to work together and ensure that we reach out to all young people and assist young people accordingly. The last thing we said is that we must be able to work with international agencies that are dealing with youth development work. So that's what we said must happen with regard to the key partners. That's my submission. That's what we said from Group 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Group 3. I'm just Mologari. Can you please raise your hand for me? Very high, wave for everyone. The rapporteurs, can you maybe just please give your notes into her? I'll highly appreciate it. Thank you. And Group 4?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, you can come.
Yeah. Hey, it's difficult standing here. Hey, hey, point of exigence. Good day, colleagues. I'm going to be representing Group 4 on the operational of the South African Association for Youth Development Practitioners. Hey, you've given us a very difficult task. We launched yesterday, you want how it operates. It's difficult, but we managed to do justice. First, we have to understand that the association currently is still having an interim board, which means that what we are going to table here is in terms of what we think it can become fruitful, meaningful, and assist the development practitioners. First and foremostly, we have noted that the board currently is not covering people who are living with disability, and it's essential that the board, as interim it is right now, covers also the aspect so the functionalities and the needs can be properly represented in the board also. What also has been noted that the board currently does not have much of partnership. The association does not have partnership at all. It only has partnership of the Southern African Youth Council, if I've named it correctly, and the Department of Women, Youth, and persons living with disability. So we say that the extension of operational of the board, it must include the Department of Basic Education to form part of it, so it can become instrumental, and the Department of Higher Education, so we can have this idea of professionalization being nurtured from a developing area. But in the Zulu language, they say, "Igodwa lisemanzi." It's easier to turn it or bend it when it's still wet. So I think for professionalization, we can make it a success if we target that area primarily. Then secondly, we looked at the needs of the association. There's a strong need for subcommittees to exist. There are relevant subcommittees that we have observed that are very relevant is entrepreneurship, which is very important. Social is broad, but we can base it as social so that it can be compatible for those who are not even administratively sound on what social is, but can be interactive more as CPOs participating there. Then education, health, safety, and the most important one is IT/communication, so that we can have an investment of this area to focus more on developing professionalization in our youth practitioners. Now, the partnership, we are saying that the partnership moving onwards, the two primary partnerships that must be there is NYDA directly, so that it becomes instrumental in understanding and also in terms of resources and giving back to the youth practitioners. that can get additional trainings and development. And also sitters. We are grateful that the president came in, alerted us about sitters. We forgot about them. So there must be an MOU given to sitters so they can also play a focal point in development. Education does not stop, it must continue, and to ensure membership within the organization gets enough capacity building and resources on how they can expand. Now, where is important? Where must this structure be located? Very important. The location of it, we have looked at the pros and cons. We are saying that national, provincial, local, it must exist. But how must it exist? We are here in the Department of Women, Youth, and Persons Living with Disability. It's a government department, but is led by a politician. Yes, we can agree, disagree that there's challenges there. But for us to find the resonance and getting the attractions, because it's difficult to get everybody to account somewhere. If you centralize this membership of ours, this structure of ours in these three spheres, the first national sphere is the Department of Women. Then also, it must exist in basic education and higher education. Then provincial, we are looking at the modalities, but the Office of the Premier is the central point because we have understood that there's a great challenge here. Different multi-facet departments here from human settlement, higher education, water sanitations, people representing the departments in youth. But actually, how are they developing, how they're working as youth, we don't understand how, but their designation is youth. So if you centralize this office, not directly to the Office of the Premier in support, but Office of the Premier administrational. And by administrationally, we're saying the Director General's office. That can be fruitful to pave a way forward. Then in local level, we were looking also at the challenge being raised by the past 2 days regarding how the political interference in local level, and even my good friend who's commission number 3 is a very painful victim of the Gauteng collusion government. Now and then there's a reshuffle there and there. So, but we're looking at where we can locate it. It's at the office of either the city manager or the municipality manager. If we're unable, the last we can go to is the political offices, which is the mayor and speaker, so that it can be centralized, so that membership can come and get their membership, administratively can be captured. Now, currently we know that the membership here is voluntary. So if it's voluntary, it means that anybody can join it. But the criteria, it still needs a lot of work because there's been issues been raised by saying that youth development workers are not necessarily the ones who studied it, but it can be academics, researchers, and including the youth practitioners. So the membership on its own, we need to prioritize anybody who's willing or having a standardized qualification of any expertise to come back and put more or get more value from this association. Then, in the regards of the structure, the term of office, we have said that the structure must establish provincial structures, and the provincial structures will be called chapters, up until we give them a period of 6 months to implement these provincial structures. And in the provincial structures, we are proposing the structure be 5 people. You will have the chairperson, you have the secretary, you have the fundraiser, the organizer, and communication and marketing officers. Done. I think that one is very important. Then the office, we have not been privileged to get information of where the office can be. But if the office is established, there must be staff administration. That will be full-time to work there. which means that there's a need of a serious budget, sir, for this association to be effective. Now, the last one, very important. We are looking at the association becoming a beacon of hope of professionalizing and even giving a broader perspective and perception of what is professionalization as a youth practitioner. So we are lobbying the House that can there be representatives assisting the interim board to fully participate and ensure this association become a reality. This commission has seen that if we leave this important phase where we put members of each province participating and also putting more into what the organization can be, it will end up becoming another talk show, another youth accord, another national youth commission, another policy, another document written, another cash cow, which is said by the voters. So later to that, let there be a representation from all the sectors, possibly from all the provinces, and you can volunteer. There's no need of elections. We are just building so the document be a true reflection of submission. And again, we are lobbying also the House, each one of you, to submit an email and comment on how this association can be at your own or can be at others' the benefit and development. I so thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Group 4, for the detailed proposals, recommendations. It's highly valued. Just make sure the documents go to Ms. Molagadi. It will be appreciated. Colleagues, we have had the commissions and we've heard the 4 feedbacks. But obviously we know that everyone was now not in every commission. So I just wanted to request, if you were in Group 1, but you have something key, value to add, maybe to what was discussed, the topic of Group 3 or 4 and vice versa, I would just like you to also be able to give your inputs so that it can also be noted to strengthen what was done by the commissions. So I just wanted to give you the opportunity to add maybe to another commission where you were not part of, but there's something that you do think and believe can really add value to what was presented. You are protected, delegates. Don't worry, don't worry. I really like Commission 4, the details that was given. It's real action points. But anything else, colleagues, that you would like to add to another commission, it's your time. I see there's one hand behind the camera. Thank you, roaming mic.
Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Nompumelelo, and I am in Group 4. So I wanted to make a suggestion in Group 1. The question in Group 1 is, what are the challenges facing the youth workers and what needs to be done? Personally, I am a facilitator, facilitating the youth in schools and in communities doing programs of behavioral change. So the challenge that I'm facing would be entering in schools and TVET colleges to offer these programs of behavioral change. So I want to plead with the organization, and I'm glad that we have stakeholders like Department of Higher Education and Basic Education, like yesterday. Can we at least have access to be able to work together, colleagues? Because as much as learners and students are there, they also have challenges. They also have social challenges, and they also have behavioral challenges, you know, in terms of everything. As the youth, we drink, man. we drink, we have sex and all. So we need to have them and talk to them so that they are able to make informed decisions. Even if they make those wrong decisions, they should be informed. So can you colleagues have a way that we work together and be able to have access in those schools? It's not all the schools, we do have access in other schools, but can we have access in all the schools and all TVET colleges so that we are able to reach a common goal of making the life of the youth easier? I thank you.
I see there's a hand here in front.
No, thank you very much. I go by the name of Bongane Galdele. I'm from Group 2. I want to make an input and also a question to Group 1. You highly spoke of red tapes. Maybe amongst us there is someone from CICP or CITP or whosoever where they might give us any sort of assistance. Can you kindly elaborate? What are those red tapes that young people are facing? Maybe I got an interest. Maybe I can give you an assistance. Maybe I know you're having difficulties in terms of CICP. So that the last speaker spoke of that we must make submissions. So that if we need to invite CICP or CITP or whosoever, that will be able to invite. Thanks.
I don't see any hand. It's now your last chance to make an input before I call Dr. Klagala. Or forever. Hold your peace. I see Nelmarie from GIZ.
I have a loud voice, I can speak.
I can hear, but I think the recorders want to.
So we've discussed this fantastic, my comrade there, who was Group 4, really awesome, actionable steps. You mentioned something like a board that is representative of all the provinces and different sectors and industries. So is that the motion forward? I just personally, for me, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of others here, what's next? Like, what are we doing? Where is this information going? What will be produced from it? Will it just be a document? Will there be a consortium convened? What's next? Because I'd like to put up my hand to volunteer, to participate in that process, and I'm sure there's others here. So I'd just like to know what's next. Thanks.
What's next will be coming next. Now I'm referring to the way forward. Will indicate what's next.
Thank you very much. I was in, my group dealt with 2 and 5 years, so we were number 2, but we dealt with 2 spaces. But mine, I think I'm going to comment on the first group. The challenge, I think the biggest challenge is the issue of identification. You know, who we are as youth workers, what do we seek to achieve? You know, if it can be a broad understanding by all, the mandate of youth work, people can easily identify themselves with the work and they would know what is expected of them. And also to define properly, I think yesterday the colleague that was sitting there at the back spoke about defining what is a youth work, what is youth work, you know, to have a clear definition in terms of what do we mean when we say youth work and development and so on. So those right, correct definitions, all of them down, so that whether I'm in Cape Town or I'm in Lusikisiki or at Zingi, I should be able to explain what is a youth work and development in any context where we are. So if we can identify and know and have a single coordinated program at a national level run by this department, I still say it's in the center because it's very broad. When it just speaks, it speaks youth general. So if we can be able to have a program structured and a framework in terms of what is it that's needed by youth, and for every department and stakeholder and NGO and private organization would be able to see themselves in terms of how they then contribute. So if we don't do that, we will always have challenges of defining ourselves, what we seek to achieve and what we do. But if we can have a frame and an understanding and objectives that are clearly set out in our own programs, then we should be able to deliver on the mandate. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Colleagues, I think we have wrapped up the commission work. Thank you for all the valuable inputs. Dr. Klagala, I invite you to come forward. Dr. Klagala will indicate the way forward, the what's next, and close this two-day Indaba for us. And I trust, colleagues, that when you see me again, you won't just remember the peak or the pigtail, but you'll remember the fruitful discussions we had. Thank you.
Thanks, OJ, and thanks, colleague. I think I'm not going to say way forward per se, because when you were reporting back, you were able to outline the things that needs to be done. So all that we need to do as the department is just to make sure that we consolidate a report, and from there we agree on the issues that needs to be tackled. I think I've had the issue of guidelines, that it is very critical for us to have guidelines stipulating the nature of work expected out of the youth workers or youth development practitioners. And also we need to start talking about how do we standardize the practice so that we don't have people who are only seen in June, Youth Month, when they have to do one event and then we call it youth work. So we want to see visible youth workers who are out there making impact in the communities, and we must demonstrate that we are actually doing. If you are at local level, you need to go out and do work on the ground which can have impact on the lives of the young people. If you are at national level, we need to see your policy work and policy advocacy work that you are actually doing. So I've got my policy guru here, Ndate Khanaga. I'm sure he's actually in charge. He will have to come up with either the guidelines or the policy for the sector, because the aim is to regulate and ensure standardization. So we will be on top of that. The base document we will develop, and then from there we're going to make sure that we consult with the sector. But then again, the second issue is the issue of mobilizing and organizing youth workers so that we can speak with a unified voice. I've got my lieutenant here who's responsible for stakeholder engagements. He will have to drive that process of ensuring that youth workers meet, they share best practices, we communicate, we constantly have engagements, and then we learn from each other. So I'm sure he will take that into account. So colleagues, with all that said, also let me appreciate, first starting with our Minister in absentia for honoring us and officiating this important work, and our DG for the support, her attendance, as well as the Minister's advisors. I think Minister's advisor, I think they showed that, administratively and politically they are supporting this process. But then let me thank all of you for the commitment that you have shown over the 2 days, and I hope that we will hold the momentum. It is not going to be something that is going to fizzle when we get out of this room or when we depart from Birchwood. I hope that we will remain committed to the cause, and we are looking forward to seeing most of the people, becoming members of this association. I know that the minister mentioned that we must not be excluding people. But then let me borrow from other similar occupations, such as your child and youth care work, as well as community development practice. They organize themselves. They became members. I remember, I think I don't know how much is the membership now, but they were just paying something like 50,000, not 50,000, 50 rands per annum. So I don't think it's going to be a lot of money, but just to show commitment and also for the purpose of ensuring that our administration actually runs very well. We will motivate for funding in the department. We will motivate for raising of funds as well. But then I think as youth workers, to show that we really want to bring improvements to this sector, we must work towards that. And I'm just going to encourage that colleagues should do that. We will be working very closely to put the website, to ensure that there are registration forms, to do all those. And I think it's going to be working conjunction with both the civil society as well as government. It's not going to be a government-run process. So you can just check community development practitioners, they have that. You can check professions such as social work, they do that. You can even check, the National Association of Child Care Workers, they also have that. So I think that must be our starting point. And then the other issue is that, we have got an interim board. Once we've got members, they will be at liberty to choose the permanent board. But it must be chosen by people who are members, because we don't want people just influencing the process that they are not even members of. So it's very important that we've got a permanent board. We appreciate, everything that has been done by the interim board. Okay, I've thanked both the Minister, DG, and advisor, and then let me just thank the interim board members for steering the ship forward, ensuring that they facilitate registration of the NPO. I think that was very critical, and I hope that they will continue doing the other work behind the scenes. And then the facilitators, speakers, panelists, I also want to thank you for everything that you've done. Some of you have been snatched from the floor to come and participate, but then you were willing to actually come and make your contribution. Thank you very much. And the chair, people who have chaired, Ndate Khanaga, Emmanuel, I think even the deputy chair in absentia, thank you very much for steering this and directing the program. And I want to thank one person. I'm going to ask that she stands up, and then we must just thank her. She's actually running this program, and most of the time we just leave her. Mulohadi, that one. If you have not received any invite, he's there. But yeah. I think for many years she has been going to Department of Social Development about our registration, also going up and down, working with the board, liaising with them. But then in terms of stakeholder, under the leadership of OJ, she's the program manager for this project. So you're going to see her name most of the time. She is the one who will be in the forefront of communicating with you. And everyone that has actually supported this program, back in the office, I want to thank them. Our comms team, communication for the hybrid system, our comms team from the department there, we always have their back. And, I just want to thank you, colleagues. We deeply appreciate your support. Next time we will be having CNN. And SABC News, outside. But thanks a lot. Most of the time they juggle, a lot of events, but they always make time to assist us, starting from the branding, etc. Now, the important stakeholder, I'm sure today they are represented by Buidumel, South African Association for of you, South African, oh, Southern African Association of Youth Clubs. You saw the the secretary, the SG yesterday was here, but like I said, we've got long-term relationship with them. I know them as far back as 2001. Having a consortium, we've been talking about this. They were under the leadership of the late Koki Sishabela Mukoka, of whom I really still, value his contribution. He was very passionate, just like someone who was here. Dade Tapelo. Yeah, Tapelo, Malike, I want to thank you very much. You were not with us yesterday, but then when you heard that, we are gathering somewhere, you said, not without me, and for that I'm actually thankful. Colleagues, we're going to take this into consideration, and then finally, let me say the issue of partnership is very critical. We are going to be targeting internal partners in the country, like your CETAs, like your other government departments. They need to contribute to this cause, like also municipalities. But then at the same time, working closely with the NYDA, we had actually, I think we will still pursue the NYDA to come on board, and the development partners. We need to work with the development. I know the Netherlands, they are actually supporting this cause. UNFPA, I already mentioned to you that they have put it in their plan for next year. AU is ready. We just have to approach them. The Commonwealth, they will certainly support us. So thanks. Your views will be taken into account. Let me also thank our online participants. And, I must not forget the institutions of higher learning. They've been there yesterday and today. Our colleagues, we sincerely appreciate. I want to wish you all the best of the weekend. Those who is their month end. Don't forget some of us. And thank you, colleagues.
Okay, thanks, colleagues. We can now go and enjoy lunch together.